Mom, why does the water taste weird?
Scientists recently discovered PFAS contamination in rainwater across parts of the world.
For decades, scientists believed certain industrial chemicals were almost indestructible, not in a good way. These substances resisted heat, water, oil, even time itself. They were used in non-stick pans, waterproof clothing, food packaging, firefighting foam, cosmetics, and thousands of everyday products. Today, they are known by another name, forever chemicals, or PFAS, and scientists are now finding them almost everywhere on Earth, inside rivers, inside rainwater, inside Arctic ice, and increasingly, inside the human body. This documentary follows the growing investigation into one of the most widespread chemical exposures in modern history, because the disturbing question is no longer, are PFAS around us? But, what are they doing to humans? At first, PFAS did not seem dangerous. In fact, they were considered revolutionary. During the mid-20th century, manufacturers praised them for their durability. Pans became non-stick. Jackets became waterproof. Industrial equipment became more resistant to chemicals and fire. The chemicals were everywhere, but there was one problem. PFAS molecules do not break down easily. Some may remain in the environment for decades, possibly centuries. Scientists eventually began detecting them far away from factories, in lakes, in soil, in wildlife. Then came something even more unsettling. Researchers started finding PFAS inside human blood samples. Not isolated cases, large populations, entire communities. And many of those communities had no idea they had been exposed. In some regions, contamination was linked to firefighting foam used near military bases and airports. In others, industrial waste entered groundwater systems quietly over many years. The exposure was often invisible. No smell, no unusual color, no immediate symptoms, which made the danger psychologically difficult to detect. Some scientists began asking a disturbing question. If these chemicals remain inside the body for years, what happens after lifelong exposure? PFAS stands for perfluoroalkyl substances and polyfluoroalkyl substances, a large group of synthetic chemicals designed to resist breakdown. What makes them useful industrially, it may also make them difficult for the human body to remove. Researchers now believe certain PFAS compounds can accumulate over time, and multiple studies have investigated possible links to reduced fertility, hormonal disruption, immune system effects, developmental problems, thyroid abnormalities, high cholesterol, and certain cancers. Some studies have also examined whether PFAS exposure could reduce vaccine response in children. That discovery alarmed many scientists, because it suggested these chemicals might interact with the immune system itself. The problem is complicated by one major reality. PFAS are not a single chemical. There are thousands of variations, and scientists still do not fully understand the long-term effects of many of them, which means humanity may still be in the early stages of understanding the true scale of exposure. One reason PFAS became such a global problem is their extraordinary mobility. These chemicals can travel through water systems, soil, air particles, and industrial runoff. Over time, contamination can spread far beyond the original source. Some researchers have detected PFAS in remote regions with little industrial activity. Even rainfall has shown traces in certain studies. That realization changed the conversation completely. This was no longer a localized pollution story. It was becoming a global environmental issue. Scientists are still studying exactly how PFAS interact with the body, but some compounds appear capable of remaining in human blood for years. Certain studies have explored whether PFAS may interfere with hormones involved in growth, metabolism, stress response, and reproduction. This has raised concerns about fertility and reproductive health, especially as some countries are already experiencing declining birth rates and rising infertility trends. Researchers are careful not to oversimplify the science. Not every exposure leads to disease, and many health outcomes involve multiple factors. But the growing number of studies has intensified public concern because the exposure is so widespread. In several countries, entire towns have undergone blood testing after contamination discoveries. Residents describe years of uncertainty. Parents wondered whether their children had been exposed during pregnancy. Families questioned whether long-term illnesses were connected. Some firefighters also became part of the conversation. For decades, specialized firefighting foams containing PFAS were widely used during training exercises and emergency responses. Over time, contamination sometimes entered nearby groundwater systems. Investigations later revealed how difficult cleanup could become once PFAS entered the environment. Traditional water treatment systems were often not designed to remove them completely. And because the chemicals move slowly and persist for long periods, the contamination could continue spreading quietly underground. One of the biggest difficulties is that PFAS science is still evolving. Some compounds are now restricted in certain countries. Others continue to be studied. Meanwhile, manufacturers have sometimes replaced older PFAS compounds with newer alternatives that scientists are still evaluating. This creates an ongoing challenge for regulators and researchers. Because by the time enough long-term health data exists, millions of people may have already been exposed. The PFAS issue has become larger than a single industry. It now intersects with public health, environmental policy, consumer safety, water infrastructure, and global manufacturing. Governments around the world are increasing investigations into contamination levels. Some regions have introduced stricter drinking water standards. Others are facing costly cleanup operations that could take years. But the broader concern remains deeply unsettling. Modern society created chemicals designed to last forever. And now scientists are trying to understand whether the consequences may also last far longer than expected. The fear is not dramatic, it is quiet. Because most exposure happens invisibly, through ordinary daily life. A glass of water, food packaging, dust particles, consumer products people rarely think about. And that may be what makes the story psychologically disturbing. Scientists emphasize that research is still developing. Not every person exposed to PFAS will develop serious illness, and many health studies involve complex variables. Awareness is growing rapidly. New testing technologies are improving detection. Governments are increasing monitoring efforts. Water filtration systems are advancing, and public pressure has forced greater scrutiny of industrial contamination. The scientific investigation is far from over. In many ways, it may only be beginning. Experts often recommend practical steps such as checking local water quality reports, using certified water filters when appropriate, following updated public health guidance, and reducing unnecessary exposure where possible. But the larger issue goes beyond individual choices. PFAS contamination revealed something uncomfortable about the modern world. Sometimes technological progress moves faster than long-term safety understanding. And by the time the consequences become visible, the chemicals may already be everywhere. The disturbing part is not that PFAS exist. It is that most people lived around them for decades without realizing it. And even now, scientists are still trying to answer the same question. How much of modern human health has already been quietly shaped by forever chemicals?